Well, good afternoon, Emily Blackburn.
Hey, Mikey.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we are looking at field note. I don't have the number. I think it's 1163. Yeah, and the title of it is The Undervalued Leadership Skill of Self-Editing. All right. So,
Yeah.
quiz question. Do you find yourself being good at this skill?
So, being a communicator,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to be, but of course, there are moments where you slip up and you say, "Ooh, could have applied a filter on that one, or could have read that email out loud before I hit send." So, I could probably do to practice what I preach a little bit more in terms of the people that I work with and walking the walk. But I think I self edit pretty well. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. I mean, as far as my experience with you, you certainly don't have a reputation for someone who goes out off in a half-cocked kind of way. So yeah, your reputation precedes yourself as doing just fine in this area. So let me focus in on the word undervalued here, right? Um, is this an underrated skill, or is it something? It's definitely something that can get you in trouble. So in that sense, it feels like it might be exactly valued properly, right? Or do you feel like it's undervalued here? Is there something going on with this particular thing that people have a tendency to ignore self-editing as a skill you should develop?
I think it can be undervalued at times, Mikey, and I'll tell you why. I think people forget that communication inherently, every communication that you send, that you say, that you type is inherently strategic, right? It's a decision that you're making about how you want to be seen, how what you want this relationship to stay with the person that you're communicating with. And people don't think about that. They don't think about the way that I'm communicating says something about this relationship, and I'm making a statement and I'm demonstrating my values and how I'm coming across. And people, I think that's where things tend to get lost is people spew things out without taking a gut check to say,
Right.
oh,
So
I wonder
interesting.
how this will
They
be.
might they might think about that in certain circumstances. So in some areas of their lives, they're like very aware of it. But then when they let their guard down, there becomes this front stage and backstage kind of mentality that goes on. And then they don't self edit backstage. They
Right.
only self edit when they're on stage. And yeah, that wouldn't be cool. I have a tendency not to work that way. I had something that happened. Let me say it this way. I'm pretty good at this. This self-editing thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't mean to brag, but I am pretty good when it comes to this thing. But there's a specific reason.
Okay.
And the reason that I'm kind of pausing here is because I'm in the middle of a self-editing kind of exercise that says
Oh,
maybe I shouldn't tell this story out loud as to why it is, because
we're watching magic happen.
it it feels like it might be too much information, right? And so there's time. So for instance, I said something on the podcast here 5 days ago that I kind of wish I shouldn't have gone down that road, right? And then it was brought up by somebody else, and I was like, yeah, if I had to do that over again, I probably wouldn't have used that as an illustration. And so moving forward, that's going to be the self-editing anchor that's in my mind, like moving forward. But it's topical, right? And so
Yep.
I'm about to say a story that feels like this might be another one of those things, right?
Hmm.
So, but I'll say it anyway. So let
Okay.
me just say,
Straight past the screen.
I have never in my life, in anger or surprise or caught off guard or anything like that, I've never, even once in my life, deployed a cuss word in any way.
Wow.
And I know it sounds like it's a humble brag, but I know that it's absolutely true. Like even like an under my breath kind of situation. I've never. So this notion of like self-editing
Hmm.
had to do when I was a young child with um, my eternal soul
Hmm.
being being able to have an afterlife or not, right? So as a result of like that high kind of standard around it, I had something in my brain that says you self-edit even every thought that's coming out of your mind, right?
Yeah.
And whereas some people might think of that as an abusive situation, I am really thankful
Yeah.
for that kind of framework that was put on my head as a young child. Because when I read this field note today, I'm like, I don't think, right? So even as I've kind of emerged from the type of thing that made me think that way, and now I like swear words, I just never, ever use them, right? I
Yeah.
think they're funny. I think there's times where I'm like, oh, if I said this right now, this would be fantastically funny, right?
Right.
But there's something about that self-edit, but that does not allow me to ever use them, ever, ever, right? Um,
You bring up an
so
important distinction though, Mikey, is that you have a muscle and you've developed a muscle that a lot
yes,
of leaders don't have.
yes,
And so that's part of the process, right? It's like
yeah,
identifying. I think step one is self-awareness, right? So I can get defensive when I'm in one-on-one conversations, or
right,
I can be sarcastic when I'm in group situations, right? Like recognizing how you show up in different phases is step one. And then
yes,
step two is just building that muscle of every output that you're doing communication wise, taking a beat, filtering out those cuss words in your case, right? Which
yes.
you've been doing since day one, and then proceeding and having a conversation. And
Yeah.
that's
No,
a lot of leaders miss.
so the field note recommends specifically about, okay, let's deploy one kind of behavioral action here.
Yep.
Read your emails out loud
Yep.
before you send them, right?
Yep.
And I think that's great. Do you think that that exercise by itself will actually help you in the hallway 3 days later, right? When you're about to say something, when you're in the circumstance where your hair is down a little bit and you wouldn't necessarily be self-editing, do you think the one exercise will affect the other? Or do you think that there's a different kind of exercise you need to grow to in phase two?
I think so, but I think yes, because you have to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got to start if it's easier for you to start in written communication because there's not a ticking timer in front of you as in another person in a face-to-face conversation waiting for you to speak, then by all means start there. But hopefully that will evolve into you in one-on-one conversation saying, "Hang on one second, let me think about how I want to say this."
Right.
Because when I'm in meetings and conversations with leaders and they do that, that immediately screams credible to me because this leader cares about how they're showing up. They're willing to give it a second thought in order to communicate as clearly and directly and sometimes delicately as possible, right? But you've got to start somewhere. You got to start building the muscle somewhere, even if it's checking an email or a text.
Right. Okay. So can you imagine what the second stage would be? Like, because I love it. I think that's a great first exercise, something that you can end up doing 50 times a day in terms of like checking yourself. But if you're like, oh, I'm still having trouble with popping off
Mm-hmm.
when I wish that I wouldn't, what do you think the actual exercise is that you could recommend to somebody
Yeah.
when they need to take that next step?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think sometimes it's because people struggle with that on the spot cognition of thinking about something right before you're about to blurt it out. And so, an exercise that I would recommend is blocking some time ahead of important meetings and asking yourself, what's the space that I'm going into?
Hmm.
How do these people typically react to certain commentary, positive, negative, aggressive, defensive, whatever it is? How do
Yeah.
I need to show up in this space? What do I want this to say about my relationship with them? How do I want to be seen? What do I want to get out of them as a result? So just doing
Right.
that internal gut check behind the scenes before the timer even starts.
Right. Okay. So you bring up something that was mentioned in the comment section today. Cecilia Ann in our comment section brought up specifically that what she's discovered this year that's been truly transformative, that's about this field note, is that she writes her emails as normally and with straight from the heart and the attention, and then she takes it to Chat GPT. Like she'll take it to an AI and give that a prompt that says, make this sound more powerful, more inspirational, less intimidating, more heartfelt, more uplifting, whatever it is that she feels like she needs to prompt it. And that practice by itself has, she said, because it was asked of her specifically in the comment section, did that actually help you with your live interactions as well. And she says it absolutely has. So to your point about doing that in a meeting, like if you're anticipating what the trouble points would be, and you have, whether it's using Alex as a conversational partner, like our AI conversational partner and coach, or just taking time to think through what your responses are going to be, the real key that you're giving yourself is phraseology.
Yep.
So that when you're caught in a frenetic red line kind of moment, that you're not defaulting to the cuss word, right?
Yeah.
You're defaulting to this phraseology that you thought through, and you're allowing that behavior to affect it. So, but the trick there is actually carving out that 15 minutes ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So if you're someone who actually does have trouble with that, can you take 15 minutes ahead of time, establish some phrases for yourself? I think that's a great recommendation there.
Not even just phrases, Mikey, but I mean, and I'm going to nerd out about communication a little bit, but when we think about style, like how do I want to show up on this call? Do I want to interrupt people? Do I want to be bold? Do I want to sit back? Do I want to listen? It's so much more than the actual words coming out of your mouth. Sometimes it can be as simple as physically, how do I want to show up on this call, and what do I want it to say about me?
Right.
So
you're redeeming my junior high version of myself, who always showed up at school on different day, trying out different personalities, trying to figure out the person I want to be, right? And then by the time I got to 10th grade, I kind of left that behind as like, oh, that was kind of ridiculous. Like there was a full week in 7th grade where I was like, I'm going to be the class clown, right? And then you move on the next day, it's like, I'm going to be the cool guy, right?
Yep.
But what you're bringing up is this idea that in the style that you use, there are certain markers, and we encourage everybody to check out our style code content on thestylecode.com. And you do have the ability to flex that, right?
Yep.
Going into a specific call, when you know who it is that you're talking to, if you should, dial up your attractiveness markers versus dialing up your power markers, it's a big deal. And then that's more of a framework that affects your mindset. You're not necessarily thinking about specific phrases, but you are thinking about what are the things that I can do here to show up differently.
Yep.
And maybe in some of those cases, you do want to dial up your power markers, and you intentionally want to have some cuss words ready to go, right?
Sure.
I would never do that because I've got a reputation now to uphold. Yeah. No, I thought it was so funny. Our colleague Wes, we were in a firm meeting several months ago, and he also has this reputation of, never swearing. And he quoted somebody else saying the F-bomb or something like that. And then it became like an inside joke. And for a couple hours in a row there were several references. And he capped it off by just saying out loud to everybody, F all y'all. He didn't say F, he actually said it. And so just this notion of like breaking the ice that way was very funny, right? And there are moments where like the most appropriate thing you can do is flex your style to a power marker that actually seems like, and that was a perfect thing because it's an example of what seems like it was a power marker, but it was actually him using the F word in that situation was actually an attractiveness marker because he was making a joke that diffused it, right? But most people would think, well, anytime you use the F word, it would be a power marker. But no, if you flex well enough, you start to think through these things. If you've got that framework in your head, it could be great, right? And what does it save you for? Why are we talking about this? What are the advantages of editing yourself? Because it seems like, sometimes code switching has a bad connotation to it.
Yeah. It's a great point, Mikey. And I think that's the number one question that we get when we talk about our style markers is, this feels inauthentic. Like this isn't something that I would do, right? I wouldn't show up and cuss in a meeting, right? And to that, we would say, if you look at our marker inventory or the concept of self-editing, it's a menu. You get to choose what's authentic to you and what isn't. And going back to your point about trying on different personas in high school, I'm willing to bet that you leveled out somewhere in the average of all of those different personas.
Probably. Yeah.
Right. They were authentic to you in some way, shape, or form, and you just kind of had to find that equilibrium. So self-editing, especially when it comes to communication, isn't about being inauthentic. It's just about being approachable. It's about creating a safe space for your team to feel like they can speak freely and they're not going to get an off the off the handle reaction or knee jerk reaction from you. You're someone that's measured. You're someone that thinks about communication strategically, and you think ahead about how you want to show up and how you want to be perceived.
Yeah. Okay. The quote that we have to highlight, because I thought it was great here, is tasting your words before you spit them out, right? Great little quote. We tried to figure out who it was should be attributed to, but I think that the lesson in them is great. So especially if they taste bitter to you, right?
Yep.
And so you got an email, read it out loud, right? Does it taste bitter to you? Then maybe it's best left off the page.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a little bit of the golden rule. So if you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to be fed it, don't feed it to somebody else.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for your time today, Emily. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Mikey.
All right. Bye now.